You're listening to XVGM Radio. welcome to XVGM Radio, where the bits keep coming. I'm Justin.
And I'm Mike.
And this is episode 48. Very apropos, Final Fantasy VII.
It could have been 47.
It could have been
Think
47.
About that. 47 Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, but this one's coming out at the beginning of April.
Yeah, April 1st.
Yeah.
This is no joke, folks.
No, it's not. No, we really are doing Final Fantasy VII because they are doing the remake in 10 days.
Yeah, or less than that? 10, 9?
April
9,
10th?
10?
So yeah.
9, 10?
Math is whatever. More importantly, we have a very special and also apropos guest.
Yes.
For this episode, we are joined by a member of a metal band called Knights of the Round. Justin, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks, guys. My name is Justin Taylor. I'm the founder and guitar player for the metal VGM band Knight of the Round. We are a Final Fantasy themed metal band. The band has been around for about 8 years. The project's been around for about 12 years.
Okay. Nice. So you play guitars in that band, right?
Yes, I play guitar and I do a fair portion of the songwriting. Song arranging, I guess you should say.
Okay. And then you also have 3 other members. Kevin Bauman on drums, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then Justin Wilbanks on guitar, so you get the dueling Justins.
Yeah.
Dueling Justins, dueling guitars.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to make it as confusing as we can.
Right.
For everybody.
And then Adam Payne is on bass.
Sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
sir.
such an awesome last name for a metal musician. I'm Adam Payne.
So jealous of you.
We opened up the episode with Prelude, which is the very first track that you hear on every Final Fantasy.
Yep.
Afterwards, we played a track off of Knights of the Round's newest album. And is it Knight of the Round or Knights of the Round?
It is singular night. I know
is
it's
one
confusing
night.
Because there's a little bit of a story with that, which I can get into. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we definitely want to hear that. So we played a track off of the newly released Final Fantasy VII concept album that they came out with. And that is that just called Final Fantasy VII?
It's just called Seven, spelled out Seven.
Okay.
For obvious reasons, but kind of like a dual meaning. It is actually our 7th release as a band, also.
That's pretty good timing there.
Yeah. Back when we were tossing around ideas for the album, that was one of the first ones, and I think it was Adam that mentioned that. He's like, you realize this is the 7th release of the band? I was like, oh, okay, that's it.
They're like, that's it. We got to do it, right? So we played their opening / bombing mission track from Final Fantasy VII. Of course, the entire soundtrack composed by Lord and Master of all Final Fantasy VGM, Nobuo Uematsu.
Yes.
So today's episode, we're going to be talking to Justin about his band, talking to him about his Final Fantasy VII memories, sharing some of our Final Fantasy VII memories, and talking a little bit about the music of Final Fantasy VII, this landmark, groundbreaking Final Fantasy role-playing game, which defined and changed role-playing games, and especially JRPGs, Japanese role-playing games, forever.
Good old 90s JRPGs.
Yes. So, let's first jump in because we need to do a bit of work beforehand. We got to do a clarification on a previous episode. This is more of a in addition to than a clarification, but we wanted to briefly touch on episode 46 where we did reverse picks. And Justin picked a track for me from Sega Rally Championship on the Sega Saturn.
I believe that was the track that won the night.
Yes, it was so good. So one of our listeners, Electric Boogaloo, on Discord, reached out to me and wanted to give me a heads up about the vocalist. We were going back and forth on whether or not it was Takanobu Mitsuyoshi. It turns out the vocalist is Naoki Takayo. He also gave me some additional information about this version of the song. It is an arranged version of the song that was originally on the Sega Rally Championship Ignition arrangement album, but it did end up on the Saturn version of the game as well as the PC version of the game. It plays,
I think, during the credits?
It plays in the main credit roll when you beat the championship mode. So, thanks to Electric Boogaloo for giving us a little bit of information about that.
Yeah.
So this song that we opened up with the Prelude, and then following up with the opening and the bombing mission, the Knights of the Round, or Night of the Round version, it is a very different take on that song. And I don't think it's a bad take. I think it's actually a really energetic and exciting take. And it really kind of changes up the scope and feel of the song, especially when going from Prelude in.
Oh, yeah.
So when you're listening to Prelude, you're like, good old Final Fantasy VII. And then
even the beginning of this, like
Yeah.
the opening was very, very faithful to what I remember from the original soundtrack.
Yeah.
Like you guys, like I'd say, knocked it out of the park in many ways, but just like getting that opening with like the bells and everything else.
Thank you.
Oh, it immediately the memories came back.
Yeah.
And I've been playing Final Fantasy VII. I started replaying it a couple of years ago, and in the last couple of months, I've actually been getting back to try to like. Originally, I was going to try to beat it before the re-release came, or the remake came out. I don't think that's going to happen right now because I made some mistakes and I'm stuck somewhere. But that's neither here nor there. It's just like hearing those bells and then shifting into the bombing mission stuff and just like going hard on the guitars and everything else. Just such an awesome shift. Mike and I were talking while we were listening, just some of the things that we were pulling out. I've heard many different covers, one way or the other, of this particular track, and one of the things that I noticed here that you don't usually get in a lot of those other covers or people recreating the track is you don't usually get the sounds of like that train that's coming in the beginning. So the first thing that I picked up on was like, I don't know what you guys did, and I mean you said that you guys used some snare samples, but I just thought it was awesome that like I listen to this and I can hear the train, and it's just like, that's so cool. What are you doing? Like, where's that? What is this train?
are you riding a train while playing the song? Like, yeah.
I'm gullible.
So how was that created? You'd mentioned snare samples, but how were they adjusted to make it sound like a train?
I actually wrote and kind of recorded a lot of that intro well before I recorded the rest of the track. The way I typically do these songs is I will arrange and record like demo versions, or at least parts of the song, and then I'll like send them to the guys in the band and ask for feedback and stuff. And I had that whole intro sequence done back when I wrote the demo of the song, which I think was probably back in like August of last year, maybe July.
Okay.
And when it came time to actually recording this final version of the album, I basically just kind of copied over the whole intro part because I loved the way it came out. So it, I gotta go kind of way far back here, but I believe I used snare drum samples from a drum plugin called Easy Drummer 2.
Okay.
I forgot what snare drum exactly it is, but it's all done in MIDI. So you basically program the hits as you need, and you can adjust the velocity of each hit. So you kind of program them as if it's a real drummer doing kind of like a crescendo.
And that makes sense too. I mean, like when you think about the original version of the song, because the original version was also done in MIDI, if I recall.
Yeah.
So that makes total sense.
Yeah, I was actually surprised at how well and how much that sounded like a train. Kind of, it's funny, you guys had a very similar reaction to how I heard it after I programmed those snare drums like that.
Right.
I was like, oh wow, this sounds exactly how I want it to sound. Okay, done. On to the next part. And I like never looked back. So
Final Fantasy has done a lot with train noises. I remember in Final Fantasy VI,
it really has.
there was that.
It really has.
Oh, in the was the Doom Train or
Yeah.
Train.
Yep.
And then Final Fantasy
Train,
VIII,
yeah.
Selfie Loves Trains.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Selfie. So now this song that we played, the opening bombing mission, so it starts off with these trains, but then it kind of comes in and goes back and forth between the opening song and the bombing mission, then the bombing mission, then the opening song. And it's going kind of like back and forth, so it doesn't stay faithful in the sense that the order of operation, where you play the entire opening,
Sure.
and then you go into the bombing mission. And I thought that was a really unique and fresh take on these two songs, which are kind of different in a lot of ways. The bombing mission is very serious and is very intense sounding, and the opening is much more like flowy. You really feel like you're part of the live stream, kind of flowing through. And then you get smacked in the face with that, the do.
Yeah, well, I mean, the way I've always seen it is the like the bombing mission, like that stuff is like Cloud, Barrett, and all them, and then the other part that you're talking about is very much just Aerith.
Yeah.
And so it's like the dichotomy there. 'Cause
Right.
That's what the opening cinematic is.
Yeah,
You're bouncing between this girl that you have no idea about and then these mercenaries that you don't know anything about either. But like clearly these guys are violent and she's just
A flower girl.
a flower girl.
Way to, make... way to make her basic. Like... we really tried to not pick like the heavy hitters through and through. We really went through the soundtrack and we were like, we love all these songs, but what ones do we really love and do we really want to like talk about that hit us on maybe an emotional level in a different way?
And obviously the one that I could not pick that I wish I hadn't picked earlier was Cosmo Canyon. If you want to hear that, you can go listen to Justin's Picks episode. Yes. I don't even remember anymore. 16?
No, that was Data. So maybe, or Data East. I can't remember.
Either way,
we've done a bunch of episodes. Justin had his own picks, so go listen to that if you want to hear Cosmo Canyon and hear him profess his love of Cosmo Canyon. So.
On that note, the game is Final Fantasy VII. The system is PlayStation 1. The year of release is
1997.
Did that from memory.
Yes, you have to.
I did.
We're going to talk a little bit about where we all were in 1997 and how we all came to play this game and hear this memorable soundtrack. But let's get started with our first pick.
Yep, so my first pick of this episode is going to be the track called Hurry with an exclamation point. Welcome back. Thank you for hanging around. That was Hurry from Final Fantasy VII, and boy did we hurry.
We did. We hurried all over the place. We were talking to Justin about this song, not my Justin. This is confusing.
I don't
There's
belong
two
to no
Justins.
man. First off.
So we were talking to Knights of the Round Justin, or Knight of the Round Justin.
Knight of the Round.
Yeah, there we go. About this song, and he actually mentioned that they were potentially interested in playing this song on their album 7. So what was the deciding factor where you were like, nah, I don't think we're going to do this one?
Well, that insane keyboard run definitely didn't sound like it would be fun to have to learn.
You mean the one that was like...
Yeah. I mean, we could have definitely made it work. As I was talking about earlier, that this and maybe 2 or 3 other songs were definitely potential tracks for the 7 album. There was, I think the original plan was to have 15 tracks. I think that CD ended up being 13.
Okay.
But we were happy with the way it ended up because it's still the longest album that we've put out. And it's the album with the most tracks, so we still feel like we were, offering more than we usually did.
Very cool.
On our previous releases. So we're happy, and we were under somewhat of a time constraint.
Right, that's true. Especially if you're releasing.
We wanted to have the album out. Yeah,
right. You were listening. You have it out on CD, right?
Yeah, it came out on February 21st.
Okay. And is that self-published like through Bandcamp or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
We do everything ourselves.
Yeah. So we'll definitely. Yeah, everybody will be able to get links to that down in the show notes on our website.
There's also an option to buy it in vinyl.
Ooh, tempting.
Yes.
I am a bit of a vinyl
VGM vinyl
collector, so it may be a possibility.
Awesome.
Yeah. So this song, at least I have a little story behind it.
Of course.
So XVGM Justin and I have a mutual friend, Brian, who's been on the show. He was on the Sierra Games episode that we did not too long ago. And Brian used to come up with lyrics for different songs. One song I remember that he did was the Yoshi's Island, the song when you're in the mines. It's like, working in my mines. It was a song about basically child labor.
Yes.
And this song, he also created a little short blurb of lyrics, which I'll say. So it's the part where it's like, dun, 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 dun. So he came up with, hey, kids, stop that train. And then he'd be like, and just go crazy with the keyboard run. So
Love that.
So now that's stuck in everybody's head. Yeah. So now whenever you hear hurry, you're going to hear, hey, kids, stop that train. So there you go.
Of course.
Yes.
But so this track is used a number of times throughout the game.
There's a few songs that are.
Oh, yeah. A lot of the themes come back in many different places. I mean, it's not a new song every time you're hearing something.
Right.
But like this in particular is used to create a type of atmosphere or feeling. Like it's called Hurry because this is the song that's usually playing when stuff's going down and you gotta either make it to somewhere or like get out of somewhere.
Right.
Like, it's on the first disc. It's one of the first tracks on the soundtrack actually.
Yeah.
Like this plays in that whole bombing mission that you're on in the first part.
Yeah, towards the beginning of the game. We kind of sort of semi went chronological with this episode. Not really
by
but
accident.
Yeah, like kind of sort of. I definitely remember hearing this song like throughout the entire game, like off and on. Whenever they did that, it was always really cool to hear because you'd always be like, wait, I think I've heard this song before. But then you're like, I like this song. So it was okay to hear it multiple times. So I would say Final Fantasy VII and maybe like Metal Gear Solid were like the 2 games on the PlayStation that really kind of changed the way that we look at stories in games and characters in games.
I would agree to that, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about where we all were in 1997. So let's start with Night of the Round, Justin. Where were you in 1997? Did you get this game when it came out, or did you play it like way later, or?
So I didn't play it way later. I was in middle school. I think I was in 7th grade.
Okay. So you were a couple of years younger than us.
I had played the demo when they released the demo for Final Fantasy VII. I forgot what game that came with.
Was it like the Brave Fencer Musashi, I think?
Maybe. For some reason, I was so excited to play that demo, and I had never gotten like super into the Final Fantasy games before that. I had recently dabbled in, because I was big on the Super Nintendo in my, my elementary school days, and played a little bit of Final Fantasy, 4 and 6 or 2 and 3, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
I guess you can say I wasn't like a very mature gamer. I was, for a lack of a better term, I didn't have the patience for like a long role-playing game like that.
Oh, okay.
Like, any Final Fantasy game. But I
You were more of like an action or fighting game.
I was big in, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, same here.
Mario games, stuff like that. But I did dabble in Final Fantasy 2 and 3, and I had recently put a few hours into Final Fantasy 3. I think it was my older brother had kind of shown me Final Fantasy 3 and the mechanics and stuff, and I was interested, but I didn't have the patience at that age. But when the demo came out for Final Fantasy 7, I was anxious to try it, and I don't remember how I got my hands on a copy. Because I definitely did not buy whatever game that demo came with.
It might have come out like in a magazine or something too.
So there were two demo discs.
Okay.
The first one had you playing as Cloud, Barrett, and Eris, and that's the one that I remember because that demo disc came with Tobal number 1.
Oh yes.
And then it also had like video previews of Final Fantasy Tactics, Bushido Blade, which is why you're thinking of that,
right?
In Saga Frontier.
Okay.
The second demo, which is the one that I think most people know, is the one where you had Barrett, Cloud, and Tifa.
Okay.
And that was a PlayStation Underground 2 dedicated Squaresoft demo disc.
Okay.
That's what it was.
Yep.
Interesting.
That's what it was, because I had the PlayStation. I was all about PlayStation Underground.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends were. Yep.
Yeah. I think I had just gotten a PlayStation right around that time.
So like 97.
Because that was around the time. That was around the time that the N64 came out. I believe.
Yeah, the N64 came out in 97, so yeah, with Super Mario 64.
I remember because I wanted the N64 so bad, but supply was super limited, so I got the PlayStation instead. I absolutely love the PlayStation. I'd say the PlayStation wound up being a better console, but that's a separate discussion for another day. But I absolutely loved that FF7 demo. I was hooked. My mind was blown at the graphics, the gameplay. I remember it on the demo. You could do the Leviathan summon.
Yep.
And this is funny because, like, in looking back, like, they were totally just like flexing the summons.
Yeah.
They were. They gave you stuff that you didn't, you couldn't get at that point in the game.
Right.
Like, look what this PlayStation can do.
Yeah.
I don't think I got the game like at launch or anything, but shortly after it came out, kid that lived down the street from me, Tim, me and him were good buddies at the time, and he got it, or his brother got it, and I'd go over to his house and watch him play, and I think when they both finished it, I borrowed it from him, and that's when I just started it, and I just never looked back. I was hooked, obsessed.
Very cool.
Yeah, that was my game. It was seventh grade.
Oh, okay, 7th grade. So interestingly enough, the game released in Japan January 31st, 1997. We got it in September, on September 7th, 1997. And the PAL territory got it in November 17th, 1997, so about 2 months afterwards. There was an international version which came out in Japan, exclusively to Japan. And that,
not very international.
I know. Well, I'll explain. That came out October 2nd, 1997. That had a bunch of changes that were made for the US release. So that's why they called it the international version, because it's basically the version that everybody else got but Japan. There was a couple.
Summons, right?
I think there were a few changes that were made in it, like the cursor, the select button. I believe that was a feature that was not in the original. The cursor that you could put on Cloud if you hit select, and that way you could actually see him sometimes. Because some of the pre-rendered backgrounds that you would walk through, you'd completely lose him because he'd disappear into the background. So, yeah.
Have that on all the time when I play.
For sure. So
always have the select button.
Yeah, no, me too. So let's get into our next track, and then I'll talk a little bit about my history with Final Fantasy VII, and then afterwards we'll talk about Justin's experience. This is Tifa's theme, and this was a soundtrack that's by Nobuo Uematsu. Welcome back to XVGM Radio. That was Tifa's theme from Final Fantasy VII, our game of the day. And the soundtrack was by Nobuo Uematsu. There's a really good reason why I picked this song. First-time listeners will have no idea, but classic listeners of this podcast know that I'm a huge, huge Tifa Lockhart fan for more than two reasons.
It's weird. I could have sworn you were a Kate Sith fan.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Which I didn't find out until today that his name is actually Kate Sith, not Cat Sith. But regardless, I still hate that character for what happens in the game. It's like when you watch a movie and there's a bad guy in the movie, or there's a guy that does something super scummy, and you're like, yo, that guy's a jerk. I don't like him. I'm going to hate him forever. That's him. So anytime anybody's like, remember Kate Sith or whatever, and I'm like, yo, I hate you.
I don't have a problem with Kate Sith. Maybe, what's the guy's actual name? Reeve, I think?
It is Reeve. Reeve with a V.
Oh, it is Reeve. Okay. Oh, okay.
Yes.
I always thought it was Reese. Yes. Okay. All right. Well,
I have a friend named Reese, so that's probably why.
There you go. And then, of course, Hojo. And I was going to say, I really like Rufus. I get him. Especially when you watch Advent Children.
Oh, my God.
You're just like, all right, man, I feel you. Like, I get it. I'm sympathetic.
Yeah.
You know?
On the trailers so far that they've shown for the remake, it looks like they're taking Reeve's character and making him like way more of like the obvious sympathetic Shinra employee. You know? I don't know if you guys picked that up from the trailers, it was a little bit more subtle in the game.
I've been trying really, really hard not to watch too much. Like, I didn't watch. They released the opening movie for the game. I didn't watch it. Like the opening, like first 5 minutes or something. Didn't watch it.
Yeah.
I have not downloaded the demo. I guess if you download the demo, I was talking to Justin about this earlier. If you download the demo, you can get some extra stuff. So you don't have to actually play through it, but like you will get some stuff if you have the demo. Then you download, you like
when you get the game.
When you get the game, and plop that 100 gigabyte download into your game. We're all stoked, excited for the remake.
Yes.
So the game came out in September '97. I was a freshman in high school, and I was kind of going through a lot of changes. Not just like I had already hit puberty and all that stuff in like middle school, but my parents were getting divorced, and I was getting into heavy metal and like really listening to a lot of different crazy music back then, and really just kind of finding myself through this void. And I had kind of stepped away a little bit from consoles. In '95, I was given the option to either get a computer or get the upcoming Nintendo 64. And I opted to get a computer, just because I really wanted to get a computer to learn it and everything. So I got a computer, started playing Doom like crazy. Doom, Final Doom, all that sort of stuff. Mech Warrior 2, etc., etc. Lost my Dr. Brain, which we talked about in the Sierra episode. And so consoles, it's not that I lost interest. I was just like, I'm going to put you on hold because I'm doing this other thing and getting into that. So when high school hit, I was really invested into getting a 64, an N64. And so I made up my mind, and I was like, okay, I'm going to definitely get an N64. But I was still like, I had no money. It wasn't until Zelda came out, Ocarina of Time, that I finally convinced my parents to get me a 64. So I got a 64, fell in love with it, thought it was awesome, right? That was like 98, I believe. So I didn't get Final Fantasy VII when it came out in 97. So flash forward a year later, and I sold all my Super NES stuff to my friend Steve in high school and used the money from that to buy a PlayStation 1. First game I got was Crash Bandicoot 3. I rented it.
Yep.
I was really big into renting back then. We would go to like Hollywood Video, and I would just like rent random games. The very first game I really wanted to buy was Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Oh, of course.
Because, I was a huge Castlevania fan, still am. So I got that, fell in love with that, thought it was great. And then I started exploring, and I was like, what else do they have? And I never really got into Final Fantasy. Like, I never really played any of the games. I didn't play 3 or 6 or whatever you want to call it. My very first exposure to JRPGs was Chrono Trigger.
Oh, yeah.
And I fell in love with Chrono Trigger on the Super NES. I got it when it came out in 95. I remember being super stoked for that game, reading Nintendo Power like page to page in the RPG section to like learn as much as I could. got it, got the strategy guide, beat the game like multiple times so that I could get all the various different endings. So when 7 was announced, it was originally announced in Nintendo Power coming out for the Nintendo 64. Or at least they were saying, like, here's a demo of an upcoming Final Fantasy game. We think it's going to be Final Fantasy VII, or something along the lines of that. And they showed pictures of these 3D rendered characters, one of which I think looked like Locke from Final Fantasy III. And then the other one was like a girl, I think with blonde hair, with a red armor or something like that, who kind of sort of resembled Tifa a little bit. And so they put out this sort of demo thing that had like all these photos in the magazines, and I thought, wow, this is really cool. It's really advanced looking. I kind of forgot about it and moved on to other stuff. And then once I had a PlayStation, I was like, all right, I'm going to get this Final Fantasy VII game. So I didn't buy it at first. I rented it. And just, it wasn't enough. Like, I had to own it because I was completely hooked renting this game and having it for, like, I don't know what it was, 3 to 5 days or whatever it was at Hollywood Video. So I returned the game, ended up getting it shortly thereafter, got the strategy guide with it, completely fell head over heels in love with Final Fantasy VII. More specifically, falling in love with Tifa Lockhart. You know, back then, I was in high school and I was going through a lot, and I was just not good with talking to girls or being like, I just was not good at, you know, trying to date girls. And so I just didn't. And it was a super awkward, weird time for me. And the only thing that really kind of made sense to me was this weird relationship that I had with this character who I found very interesting, very striking, and very charismatic, and, you know, really felt like the girl next door. And she was officially called the pinup girl of the cyber generation by, I think it was like Newsweek or something like that. So I've got my original strategy guide here from 1999 or whenever it was that I bought it. It's missing the first few pages and all. And so I figured I'd read a brief description about Tifa. So it says, Tifa and Cloud, the main character, of course, were childhood friends, but parted ways when Cloud left his hometown of, is it Nibelheim?
Yes.
Nibelheim, to join Soldier. When her parents died, Tifa also left Nibelheim and headed for Midgar, soon after opening her bar, which is weird. It's like, why would you immediately just go and open a bar? I don't know. That seems very weird. Like, oh, we're kids and we're growing up and we're teens or whatever. I'm going to open a bar.
I'm sure there's a gap in in time there.
So Tifa's seventh heaven, the name of the bar. She met Barrett and joined his ragtag group of rebels known as Avalanche. It's her goal to make sure Cloud remains with Avalanche after his first mission with the team. And then they go on to say, when fighting, Tifa lets her fists do the talking. Her attacks are generally weaker than Cloud's and Barrett's, but from early on, her chain of limit breaks is by far the best thing going. Instead of selecting a single limit break, each new attack adds to the chain for a total of 7 devastating hits. If she can score a yeah on the twirling slots, she can cause extra damage. If she stops a slot on miss, she misses with that part of the combo. Tifa should always be a frontline fighter, but may have trouble contributing during some boss fights. You know, everybody's different, and everybody has a different, like, love interest that they were potentially into. Like, you know, you back in the day, you were either like a Tifa guy or an Aerith guy, or you were a Yuffie guy. So what would you consider yourself, Justin?
I was more. Oh, sorry.
You're both Justin.
It's the first time that it happened.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I was more into Aerith or Aerith, whatever you want to call her.
Yeah. And they've corrected that for the remake. Her name is officially Aerith.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's going to be really awkward and weird to say that.
Yeah, I would agree. I was also an Aerith guy. I was going to make a joke and say I was a Kate Seth guy, but
You know, it's interesting because you could talk to somebody and you can kind of know right away. You know, at least I can. Like I can meet somebody who's a gamer and I'd be like, "You're an Aerith guy. Yeah, you're a Tifa guy.
Like,
you're a Yuffie
guy." Romantically, I out of all the female characters, I prefer Aerith. Party wise or anything else, for everything you just read there, that's why Tifa was almost always in my party.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I thought you were gonna say party-wise, like you go to a party with them.
Yeah, party-wise, I'm going to party with Tifa.
Party-wise, I'm partying with Tifa. Maybe Yuffie, she could steal some drinks. So now let's move into your story and your song that you've picked.
Yeah. So we'll hear my song first. I am going to play for everybody the Turks theme because I really enjoy this little ditty. So.
And snaps. You really enjoy the snaps.
Exactly. It.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and give a listen to that 1997 Final Fantasy VII track called the Turks theme. Welcome back. That was the Turks theme from Nobuo Uematsu's masterpiece called Final Fantasy VII. I like the song.
Yeah.
Obviously that's why I chose it, but it's...
Really?
Yeah. We were talking about it a little bit during the break. I find it has this air of mystery to it. Just sort of like, who are the Turks? What's the deal? And why are they beating the snot out of me early on in the game? A lot of questions. I'm pretty sure we get most of those answers, although I don't remember everything. I can't remember if the Turks were part of like the experimental stuff that happens within Shinra, or if they were just badass.
I don't think so. They always felt like anti-heroes to me a little bit.
Oh, I mean, they work for Shinra. They're definitely not heroes anyway.
What I mean is their vibe was very anti-hero-ish, not that they're actual characters. Like, I always felt like they were pushed to be like the cool guys, like they had the finger snaps and the jazzy jazz fingers, sunglasses and the black suits, and they'd show up and they'd be like, all, hey, we're the Turks, and I would just get annoyed every time they showed up, and these guys again. Every time the song played, I was like, these guys again. I
like the song. I
do too.
I mostly like I didn't have that reaction when the song came on. It was usually, it depends on where I was in the game. In the beginning of the game, when you first fight them, and for the first few times, like Reno and Rude are fairly formidable, and it's sometimes a difficult fight. But then somewhere near the end of Disc 1, you end up coming across them on an island somewhere. And this happened recently in my playthrough. I forgot that this is where they get stupid. So I was like, oh, okay, like I gotta like just come at them as hard as I can because this is gonna take a while. And I hit them with, I forget which summon, and then they died instantly. And I was just like, oh, okay,
whoops.
I guess they are now a joke. 'Cause from that point on, they're not a hard fight.
Right.
And then you get to Advent Children, and they're literally comic relief.
Reno always felt like the more slapsticky, goofy kind of character, and the more like...
Well, I mean, Rude is very silent. Like, he's big and imposing and just quiet.
Yeah, he was more the straight man, sort of, in the Laurel and Hardy group atmosphere.
Laurel.
I don't know, that's the vibe that I got.
Abbott and Costello?
Yeah, whatevs. So what
Make
was
some more dated references, Mike.
Yeah, I know, right? Just super dating myself right there.
I'm right there with you. I actually really liked the character Elena, however you want to
Oh
pronounce
yeah,
it.
I really liked her too.
She kind of added another layer of comic relief, sort of, because it was almost like, I don't know, like she was always like worried about like who likes who. It was almost like a kind of like a teenage love interest kind of angle thrown into the mix.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's true.
I liked it.
Yeah, the whole group overall was just kind of
They're awesome.
really interesting. You've got a lot of different personalities in there. Some of the characters were like Elena, Reno, Rude. Then there was that guy that had the dot in his head. I think his name was Seng.
Oh,
yeah, Sang.
Wait,
Sang?
did he have? Because Sang was the one with the long black hair, I think.
Yeah, but he had a dot in his hair.
Okay,
He had long black hair, and he had a dot in the middle of his head.
He grew up with Eris.
Yes.
There was Vincent Valentine, if you want to go back that far.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Oh, he was in the Turk.
Yeah.
Like in the storytelling sections.
Yeah.
So I don't know why, but I always draw parallels to Vincent Valentine from, if you've ever seen that show, The IT Crowd, Richmond, who is like the goth, Cradle of Filth listening dude. Because he was a part of that world of like the businessmen, the suits, and this and that. And then something crazy happens to him, and then he ends up becoming this like goth dude. And it's kind of similar to Vincent Valentine. I don't know why
Vincent
I draw
Valentine
this weird
found the filth.
Yeah,
It saved him.
That's it. And then he, passed out in a coffin and woke up and was a big Cradle of Filth fan. So there you go. So speaking of Cradle of Filth, or speaking of heavy metal, what would you say are Night of the Round's inspirations, or like what groups do you feel inspire you to make the music that you guys make? Despite the fact that it's based on RPGs and video game music.
There's definitely a few. I'm an avid fan of all sorts of metal that kind of go all over the metal spectrum.
Sure.
But if I had to pick a few bands, I'd say the obvious one is Meshuggah.
Yeah.
They've always been probably my favorite band. Probably something like Dimmu Borgir.
Okay.
With sort of the symphonic black metal
extreme
kind of
metal
influence.
kind of,
yeah. You could also throw in like thrash metal bands in there, Slayer, Testament, Revocation, stuff like that.
Cool.
Also, like some of the more like modern, metalcore stuff, bands like Architects.
Okay.
Yeah, so
cool.
Kind of goes all over the place, but try to blend it all in so that it's cohesive,
right,
while also being video game music, which can be a challenge at times.
Do you feel that it's more rewarding to go with the versions of the songs that kind of don't exactly copy the originals? Like, I know we were talking before we started recording that we're both pretty big fans of Lame Genie, who we've had on the show.
Oh yeah.
So their covers, I would feel, are a little bit more faithful in regards to the sound and the original like melodies and harmonies of the original tracks. So do you feel that it's more rewarding to kind of go off the beaten path, or do you feel that, especially with your group, that you always wanted to push that envelope of how can we make this song sound so different but at the same time sound so familiar?
That's probably the hardest thing that is both challenging and super rewarding at the same time, of arranging the songs the way that we do. Because I'd say going back to the way back when in my old band, I was introduced to a band called the Mini Bosses, which most people who are into video game music are familiar with the Mini Bosses, who essentially do, note for note covers. But they were like, the OGs. They were like, or at least one of the first few video game bands. But at the time when I heard them, it blew my mind. But, when I started arranging these songs, I wanted to make them not note for note covers, but, it's hard to also find that balance of, you don't want to go too far off the path of the song, so that it's not recognizable anymore.
Right.
So with us, the way that we kind of think of it, because, we mostly play conventions, whether it's, gaming conventions or anime conventions or whatever. The thing that we try to keep in mind is that for that group of people that's walking past where the bands are playing, you want to play something so that that person is able to hear what we're playing and get hit with that nostalgia and come watch us.
Okay.
So it's like you have to pick, or at least try to pick songs that are somewhat memorable. Not that that's a bad thing if you want to go into deep cut territory every once in a while.
Yeah.
But at least for what we're going for, we try to stick to songs that are not overly covered.
Yeah.
And we try to stick at least enough to the source material so that we would still consider it like a cover song. We still like pay for licensing for our songs, because even though we might change the arrangement here and there, we still consider it a cover, or maybe a rearranging.
That's the first time I've ever heard of anybody actually paying for the license for the song. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's the way you're supposed to do it. If you want to, not have to worry about any sort of
legality
repercussions. Right.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, there's quite a few services out there that make it really easy for you to do that.
That's awesome.
So we've been doing that. We've been doing that since our very first album.
Oh wow. Okay, that's cool. Do you run into any like really crazy brick walls, especially with Final Fantasy? Because I know Square is super protective. Square Enix is super protective of their everything.
Yeah.
That's why we've been getting licenses since day one.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool.
Because we know that they, at least for a while, I'm not sure if they are like it as much as they used to, but they used to. I'd say them and Nintendo are probably the two biggest culprits of. I don't know how else to say it, but not supportive of fan made.
Yeah.
No. There's no beating around the bush with that.
No.
Yeah, I mean, we consider this a tribute. We always have considered this a tribute to the music of Final Fantasy. Not like we're stealing this music and we're selling it. It's
right.
Like the money that we make from this stuff is going to it's going toward gas, and it's going toward hotels so we can go play conventions and stuff like that.
Right. Getting the word out about the band and everything, and maybe selling some merch and stuff like that. That's cool. Yeah.
I had no idea that you actually had to license.
Well, he said you should have to.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I had no idea that was even a thing with video game music.
Yeah,
because
neither.
That's part of. Part of what I've always understood about the community is that video game music was more or less license free. So hearing that is actually kind of
our show's screwed.
I mean, we're what
48 episodes deep, and
yeah. We'll see what happens.
Yeah,
I'm surprised.
Yeah, there are some companies out there that are fully supportive of this kind of thing. So
yeah, for sure.
It's nothing that I would necessarily worry about, but from a band / business perspective, it was just kind of a CYA thing on our end.
Fair.
We'll count our blessings that this episode is not our last.
We'll knock on a whole lot of wood.
Yeah. So let's move into my next pick, and then we'll talk a little bit about Justin's history with Final Fantasy VII. This song is a marcher. It is Rufus's Welcoming Ceremony. Hey, you are back, and that was Rufus's welcoming ceremony. So this track takes place when you are at the welcoming ceremony for Rufus in the place, we believe it's called Junon?
Yeah. Junon.
Junon. And you have just beaten the boss Bottomswell. And so you are landing on this like airport area, and you're going through this like you're on this giant aircraft carrier thing, and it's kind of flying through the air, this giant like plane thingy. And so you're going through all these corridors, secretly dressed as a Shinra soldier. There's this really cool part where you have to march in time with the rest of the soldiers, so that way you don't stand out.
Because it's being broadcast on TV.
Right.
So the whole thing is don't screw up on TV, otherwise you get shot.
Right, exactly. So it's pretty cool. I really love this song. I love the marchy, like marching band vibe, and it really fits with what you're doing in the game. I played marching band for several years, so I'm very much a fan of marching songs or marching type songs, mostly because of my background in marching bands.
Same, actually.
Yeah.
I always thought that this part of the game too was like I don't know, it was such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Because you have not encountered anything like this yet at this point of the game, and it's like the game was still introducing all of these new elements, what seemed like so far into the game, even though, we're still on disc 1, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
This part of the game always kind of impressive as to like that they kept doing that even, so far into it.
Yeah, because I mean, up until this point, a lot of the music that you're hearing is either like kind of really dark due to like
it's really sad.
Yeah. It's either like dark or sad or just like emotional, like Tifa's theme or
Tifa's
Aerith's
theme, right? Aerith's
theme. Oh my god,
that's so hard to do.
It's almost as hard as saying Kate Sis theme. See that too? I can't.
There you go.
That was one thing about
Cat Jerk. That's his name.
What was that?
That was one thing about this new album we have out. When I was going through the soundtrack and kind of picking what songs were going to be on it, is like I totally forgot just how like depressing and sad this soundtrack is.
Yeah.
As a whole,
No, I agree.
I think that's the reason I
guess
a
it
lot of
fits
the
the
music.
game.
It does. I mean, it's a very like hopeless game in a lot of ways. I mean, you're playing as this group, this underground group that's trying to save the planet from being just destroyed by
so many things,
by
like either Shinra or Sephiroth,
government, corporations. Really, it's just it rings so true to everything that's going on in politics today, which I won't get into because I know everybody doesn't want to talk about politics. It's not why you're here.
But for the VGM.
Yeah. But you can't deny the corporate, just oozing vibe that
oppressive.
This game. Yeah, it's oppressive, exactly. And so you
aside from politics, on the game, like there's very heavy subject matter, within the game as well.
Like
talking, like suicide and there's a lot of heavy stuff in the game, and
people get
really
killed, and
there's
you get main characters in the game, not just Aerith or Aerith, but like Jesse, Biggs, Wedge.
Oh my god!
All these characters that you initially connected with.
I don't know how I'm gonna handle this in the remake,
especially since they're like really developing those
exactly
characters.
What I was gonna say. Like they were somewhat developed in the original game. Like they didn't go too far into them, but like in the remake, I mean, you didn't play the demo.
They feel like a much bigger part. Yeah.
I'm not gonna ruin anything for the demo for you, but like you get a lot of that like depth of character just in the demo, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this.
Yeah. No, that's like it's like watching Aerith die all over again, but with these other three characters that you're, really introduced to in this remake that you're gonna completely fall head over heels in love with. They're just gonna be so fun and iconic and interesting, and they really kind of bring a little bit of a comedic value and a heroic value to the game, whereas you've got Cloud, the brooding emo, kind of like stay out of my way, I just want my paycheck, bro. And then you've got Barrett, who is a lot of people complain about this new Barrett and his voice. They're saying like, oh, he's too Mr. T sounding, but like
when he sounded like Mr. T to me in my head.
That's the thing. He always sounded like Mr. T when he was talking. He was always like, if no joke, if there was any dialogue in the game in the original where it was like, I pity the fool, I'd be like, yep. I knew it.
But yeah, I mean, maybe that's part of the issue is that it is kind of a stereotype. But I don't know. I can't get too much into it because we have the same issue. Not issue. We have the same thing. He always sounded in my head. To me, he sounded like Mr. T.
For sure.
The voice that they gave him in the remake sounds perfect.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate if it's a stereotype.
Right. Anyways, let's dive into your experience with Final Fantasy VII. So where was Justin in either 97? When did you first experience this game?
So I'm actually not sure where I first experienced it, but I do remember that it was fairly close to launch. If it wasn't in September of 97, then it was very early in 1998.
Okay.
We went to we were the same year in high school. We didn't know each other.
You and I,
then,
yeah.
But
well, we went
the same year.
Yeah, we went to different high schools in the same state, right?
Yes.
But yeah.
Going from middle school to high school, I was in the marching band and the concert band, so like the whole thing about this track that we just heard resonates a lot with me as well because I was very much into a lot of the marching stuff.
Yeah, same here.
So it sort of had the same reaction when I got to Junon and I heard the song. I was just like, oh, this is a really cool march.
Yeah.
My freshman year of high school was just sort of a really weird, awkward year for me, as I think it was for a lot of nerds in our generation. I got to high school, and some of my friends from middle school were there. Some of them went to different high schools. Some of them had moved, so my friend group got a little bit smaller, and I had to sort of rebuild that at school. But I do remember that when I found out about it, I was really amazed and also confused because I had played Final Fantasy I on the NES and somehow missed 2/4 and 3/6, and I saw 7 and I was like, whoa, where's 2 through 6? And was really confused, and then eventually figured out that the series is a massive and very weird thing. Like they're not direct sequels and everything else. My mind was blown. Needless to say. I mean, I think we all had fairly similar experiences and reactions with this game because, again, like I didn't really own an N64 or a PlayStation until around the time that I got this. This is one of the first games I got for the PlayStation.
Okay.
It was this and Crash Warp. That's the one.
That's the one I rented.
My PlayStation that I got.
So it had to have been 99 or 98, 99.
Was it really?
Yeah, because Crash Bandicoot 1 came out at launch in 96, I believe it was. 95, 96.
My timeline is all weird.
And then Crash Bandicoot 2 came out, and then 3. And 3, I believe, came out in early 99, I believe. So, I mean, I'd have to...
Maybe it was later.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure it was right around that time. So you maybe got it right around the time that I got it then. Yeah.
I mean, the first game that I remember playing on a PlayStation was Warped, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And maybe
That's weird that was the first game that we both played.
Coming from the SNES and all the games that I loved on that console.
Because you were an RPG guy on those, right?
Not as much, no.
No?
I played the original Final Fantasy on the NES,
yeah.
And then on the SNES, most of what I played were like either like Gradius 3 or Alien vs. Predator.
Okay.
So it was a lot of action and platforming.
Yeah.
Super Mario World, Mario 2, Yoshi's
Fighting
Island, all that
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah. Beat 'em ups, yeah. So we all came from 3 very different places for the most part regarding Final Fantasy VII. So let's move into our next track. This is your pick.
It is. So this next track is going to be one that I've referenced a handful of times on this show. Underneath the Rotting Pizza, one of my favorite Final Fantasy VII Nobuo Uematsu tracks.
Delicious. Are the size of your materials too out of control to handle? Do you often find yourself wishing you had a handle on your buster? Do you have huge coupos? Well, you need the fruit of the life stream orthopedic underwear. Hi. I'm Dr. Mervin Hojo. You may know of my younger brother by a similar last name. Our scientific backgrounds took us in two totally different places. He wanted to bring return to the promised land and etc. And me, well, I wanted to help the people of Midgar in a different way by helping the ladies of Midgar. So I designed the fruit of the life stream orthopedic underwear just for you, blending the power of cotton, polyester, and magic forces from within the world we live in. We were able to craft the perfect underwear just for you. And the best part is, the power of the life stream cures all back pain, guaranteed. So sign up today for your quarterly supply so you can get access to the hottest colors. Chocobo Yellow, Tonberry Turquoise, and Black Mage Onyx. And that's just for starters. We'll be introducing wave after wave of different colors and patterns, and in the future. Say tata to your tatas today. Find the fruit of the life stream orthopedic underwear at your local vending machines in Walmart, at the Golden Flosser, or in your local grocer's freezer aisle. And coming soon, the Biggs and Wedge jockey, just for men. But protect your motor balls from damage with this orthopedic jockey that's sure to put the jangle back in your dangle. Releasing worldwide in 1997.
Warning, jockstrap and optional man's ear sold separately upon release, if needed. Ladies' version doesn't actually shrink sizes inside, just on the outside. Wear when prohibited. Note, slap fights could cause underwear to fail and poke eyes out. Do not hide in pianos. All right, welcome back. That was Underneath the Rotting Pizza.
Delicious.
delicious pizza. So this is a track that always just holds a very special place in my heart because it is basically a bass groove. There's plenty of other stuff going on here. You've got some cool stuff going on in the percussion. You've got strings doing a lot of your upper range, but just that do 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 do.
Right.
Like it's.
I love that bass line though. Yeah. Like it almost sounds like electronic.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's got like an 80s like new wave kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, you know? I would say 80s and synthwave.
Yeah, synthwave for sure. And then when you combine that with the strings, it sounds like a very haunting track in a lot of ways. But the strings kind of add this interesting kind of parallel to the bass line. It feels like two different worlds colliding in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
What do you think of the track, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much nailed it. It perfectly encompasses that upper versus lower class warfare that's kind of going on in the Midgar, the mythos of Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
The slums versus the people who live on top of the plate.
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting story. Like, just the entire story in general is really interesting. And I think that was kind of like my first exposure to, like, class discussion in video, like class environment in video games, you know what I mean?
Yeah, now that I think of it, I feel like this game came out around the time that we would talk about this kind of thing in school, not like among my peers, but like in history class and stuff.
Yeah. What other memories do you have of this beginning part of the game? Since obviously Final Fantasy VII Remake's coming out in just a few days, or if you're listening to this after it came out, it just came out, or it came out recently.
Maybe a couple years ago.
Yeah, several years ago. What would you say your fondest memories are of this part of the game?
The Midgar section?
The Midgar section, since the remake is going to basically end with the Midgar section. I'm assuming right before you leave Midgar, when they're all standing on that bridge.
Yeah.
And there's been like photos, there's been like wallpapers and stuff, like right after the chase, the motorcycle chase scene.
The motorcycle chase was a huge thing because that was something I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
It was a really cool like mini game, and then it actually becomes a mini game later.
Yeah.
I'd say like the obvious things are some of like just the silly stuff, like when you're going through the slums and this guy are sick. Yeah,
So goofy.
this is back before we had quality control on translations and stuff.
I think it is just like a rush job. I think that's got to be it. Because like
Maybe.
the translator that they got, I think his name was like Ted Woolsey or something like that.
Well, I mean, he was
doing a bunch of Squaresoft games.
Yeah, this game had quite a few mistranslations, none as obvious
Right.
as
Let me
that.
read
But,
you some I've taken pictures of.
Oh,
Posted on my
snap.
Facebook.
Yes.
As I've been playing through it, every time there's like a bad translation, I take a snapshot of it and then post it on my Facebook.
All right, let's hear him.
In Cosmo Canyon, when you're talking to Red 13's grandfather, he's showing you this machine. I forget exactly what the machine was, but he just says, "I'll be stand there." And then later on, when everybody's sitting around the campfire in Cosmo Canyon, I'm not sure who's saying this. It looks like it might be Kate Sith because he's standing. Says, "Do I even got a to go on?" I don't even know what the heck that was supposed to say.
Do I even got a to go on?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
What like? What is he even trying to say there? Like, do I even got a thing to go on?
I have no idea.
no idea what he's trying to say there.
yeah, there's a lot of small ones too. Like it's in one of the Turks fights. I think Reno, he goes, "No one get in way of Reno and the Turks." He just turns into a caveman for a second.
Yeah. All right, let's move into the next track. This is a banger. This is Jenova Absolute off of the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack. You are back with XVGM Radio in our Final Fantasy VII Tribute episode where we discuss the music and our experiences with Final Fantasy VII. That was Jenova Absolute off the Nobuo Uematsu soundtrack. This song is really kind of intense, but also it kind of harkens back to a lot of the previous other tracks. It kind of harkens back to the, not really the Hurry song, but the boss theme, if I recall.
The Jenova boss theme.
Yeah, the Jenova boss theme, yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, I think there's a couple different permutations of the Jenova theme.
Yeah.
But that's, I'd have to comb through the OST again.
Yeah, so Jenova is the... You know what's weird about Final Fantasy VII is the very first time I played through it, I didn't really understand everything that was going on. Everything kind of felt a little confusing at times.
I think it was supposed to.
Yeah.
You are not alone there.
Yeah, it was very convoluted in a lot of ways, and I'm really hoping that the remake kind of corrects this and makes the plot much easier to digest, because unless you actually like sit down and watch like a recap video or like analysis video of the plot, there's a lot there that's kind of buried and hidden that you got to really kind of uncover and know.
I feel like they did some of that on purpose, because there's definitely things that are supposed to not make sense until later on in the game.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things like when certain things happen, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, is that why it was like this? Or is that what was actually going on there? I mean, the whole Jenova thing was very convoluted to begin with, but I feel like there was a lot of that stuff that they did purposefully to, for one, maybe for some like replay value. As Justin said, you're not alone.
Yeah. So from what I gather about Jenova was basically either conquered or defeated by the Cetra, by the race of chosen people.
The indigenous race.
The indigenous race. And kind of like locked away. And I think it's Hojo that uncovers Jenova's body and is basically utilizing Jenova's secrets to try to uncover the world of the Cetra, the promised land, if you will. And so that's the whole reason why they're after Aerith, because she is one of the last Cetra, the chosen people.
I think she is the last.
She is the last, right?
Yeah.
So they're trying to basically steal the secrets of that so that way they can access the promised land so they can get more Mako. So that's as far as I understand about it. So Sephiroth steals Jenova's body, but there's also that statue from the throwback cutscene. You remember the scene where he rips the statue of Jenova out, the metal statue? And it comes, they rip it out of the Mako.
I didn't think that was a statue.
Mako reactor.
That was the whole, he ripped the whole top half of her, like what was remaining of her out of the reactor.
No, so...
Go ahead.
All right.
Please.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in here. There's so much I want to talk about right now.
Go for it. Do it.
So the thing that you're talking about, it's actually just kind of like a protective cover. The thing that he rips out, like the metal Jenova thing that you're referencing, was not the real Jenova. That was actually just a kind of like a protective barrier around her tank where she actually was being held.
Yeah, because he rips it out and then she's right there in the tank, like behind.
Right. So so the actual Jenova, or most of her, is in that tank.
Yeah, that's right.
So the thing about Jenova that it does not really talk about all this directly in the game, which is kind of what you were talking about earlier, which from what I understand, a lot of the small details, I do feel like they're going to explain it more in the remake, or explain it better, because I think a lot of it was also translation errors or dialogue that they just left out of the English version and didn't finish explaining a lot of the stuff that kind of had to be pieced together. So from my understanding, the Jenova that is in that tank is most of Jenova, not all of Jenova. Almost like as if they had to like dismember her to get most of her in that tube, that, cryogenic looking thing.
Right.
Yeah. And so the pieces of Jenova that are not on her, because she kind of looks like she's like her hands are kind of tied behind her back, and most of her is in that tank, but there are pieces of her that are not within that tank. So But the thing about Jenova is that her cells are always trying to come together and trying to reform as one, right?
Right.
So the Jenova bosses that you are fighting with in the game are parts of her.
Okay.
Because, do you remember the very first time you fight Jenova? Is on the it's after the welcoming ceremony. It's when you're going to the Western continent.
Yes.
She appears as Sephiroth. Remember, he comes floating in the air and all this stuff, and when he flies into you, it's like bam, you're in a Jenova boss fight.
Right. Yeah.
And then after you defeat Jenova, it's like a little tentacle on the ground flopping around.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was what you were fighting.
So you were just fighting a piece of Jenova.
A piece of Jenova that is able to shapeshift and morph into whatever. That's why it was able to appear as Sephiroth.
Yeah, that was called Jenova Birth.
Yeah. And so that's also has to do with the whole Jenova reunion thing that happens in the game, is that all these people are injected with Jenova cells, and they're all coming to this reunion, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You had those people in the dark cloaks.
Yeah, the Shinra Manor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the people that are going to the reunion are all going to the North Crater.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
That's where Jenova crashed into the planet.
Right.
Thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
So they're all going to this one place, and that's why Sephiroth is sort of able to control Cloud as well, because Cloud has Jenova cells in him.
Right.
And so the Jenova that you see in that tank, that is most of what is left of Jenova, which was held in the Mako reactor by Nibelheim.
Right.
During that flashback scene, it shows Sephiroth, walking down those stairs with the head of Jenova. Now, I don't know if that was all he was able to get when he tried to take her or whatever. It doesn't really explain that, but that's why, and then at some point after that, and then the time, because that was all in the flashback, sometime from that moment to the time you play the game, the body has since been transported to the Shinra Tower.
Right.
So when you see her in the Shinra Tower, that's why she doesn't have a head.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
Because Sephiroth took it for something.
Right.
For some reason.
That crazy Sephiroth. Yeah. Now the pieces kind of fit together a little bit better, so.
And I do feel like they're going to explain that a little bit better in remake.
I agree.
At least I hope they do.
Fingers crossed, right? Let's move into our next track. This is your pick, Justin. What did you pick for us?
Yeah, I think this one's also kind of like a banger. This is, speaking of the end of the Midgar section, this is Crazy Motorcycle. So this is the chase
right, the theme. Chase theme, yes.
So let's listen to Crazy Motorcycle.
XVGM Radio, where the bits just keep coming.
All right, that was Crazy Motorcycle. That is the song that plays when you are escaping Midgar on a motorcycle and also trying to protect your friends that are in a truck.
Yeah. That's such a memorable scene.
It is.
Yeah. I thought the CG was just incredible in the full motion video that they had. It was such a weird change when they went from like the super like chibi style characters to like the in-game fight scene characters, which were a lot more like realistic and more accurate to like the full motion video versions. But then like you'd also get full motion video versions that had the chibi characters in the background. Like perfect example when Tifa is running on the plane and trying to jump to Barrett. And Barrett catches her or whatever. They're in their like chibi style, but the world around them is super hyper realistic. It's so bizarre. But there's something so not just cute but like adorable about the chibi style versions of the characters. Like they had no mouths in the game and until the PC version, which they added mouths, like a single like drawn on line. It was just such a stark contrast that we're all okay with it. You know what I mean? It's like comparing the boss sprites in Final Fantasy 3 or 2 or whatever to the regular characters, because the regular characters look super cutesy and very simplistic looking, and the bosses in Final Fantasy 2 and 3 or 4 and 6 are like massive. They're like these super detailed, like Michelangelo style paintings almost.
Oh yeah, they did that in 1 too. Pretty much all of the 8 and 16-bit Final Fantasies. Yeah. Your characters are always a very specific sprite size. Yeah. Because the bosses are supposed to be so epic, they always make the bosses a lot bigger because they're on the left side of the screen. Yeah. And they're often alone, or they'll have like 1 or 2 regular sized minions with them as well. But it's one of the things that I've always loved about the older Final Fantasy games is that sprite work.
Yeah, yeah. So I think they were trying to continue that here with Final Fantasy VII, and I think it got to the point where they couldn't do it anymore with like 8. And so they just went hyper realistic with everything. Yep. Everything was the same size and everything. So yeah, it made sense.
Yeah, the one scene that sticks out for me when it comes to the chibi style full motion video is always the scene in Mediel when Cloud is falling into the live stream.
Oh yeah.
That was another scene where it was everything is like super realistic looking, and then they have the rando chibi models kind of going
falling
in there. But
in.
I used to get really psyched when it cut over to the more proportionate characters, such as this chase scene that you guys were talking about originally.
Yeah. I don't know. The proportions are completely out of whack for certain characters. It's interesting.
Do tell.
And I think that's part of the problem why there's so much shade being thrown at the more realistic and normalized proportions for
the remake.
Yep, for the remake, but also just in general. I did a whole video on this on my channel to discuss it, but Tifa has this very normal sized, naturally like busty style, you know, the art, the actual like 2D art.
Yeah.
She looks very normal, very realistic. Then when you look at her in the CG cutscenes, like you'll see one scene where they look like they are 5 times the size of her head, and then other times where they look more in line with the fight scenes where it's not CG. There's no smoothing. It's just all the characters in general look like they're fighting counterparts.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think a lot of people saw the ridiculousness of that scene, like when you're fighting Scarlet in that whole scene, and they were like, that's my ideal version of Tifa. And I'm like, yo, that's so unrealistic, and there's clearly an issue there. I feel like they pulled a Tomb Raider and they accidentally turned up the dial to like 5,000 because it's just completely wrong. And all the other characters look very proportional. It's just Tifa that doesn't look proportional.
Except for Cloud and his Popeye arms.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was pretty ridiculous.
The Tifa boobs thing was always kind of ridiculous, and I'm glad that the remake is a little more on the realistic side.
But not only that, like all the characters, and Aerith too, like I was just blown away at how good all the characters look now. They all look amazing. Even Like,
Oh yeah.
because there was so much heated craziness prior to them like showing Tifa at E3.
I know.
And then they showed her, and everybody was like you had either the hardcore fanboys that were just like, no, never, and then you had like the other people that were just like, yo, she looks great, like who cares, whatever, move on. Like, we're, there's better things to talk about. Like, oh my god, did you see this trailer? It was so incredible to see that trailer. Even when they announced Remake, when you first saw that CG, kind of trailer that they showcased back before this build was created, because they scrapped the whole team for Remake.
Yep.
So that original cutscene that you saw, that trailer, that semi-trailer, whatever, that was such a big deal. And like, that was the first time that you were like, oh my god, it's actually happening. Like, we're remaking Remake. So what was it about this game you think people were just like so enamored with?
I think this game just captured a lot of people in our generation. Like, it was captivating. It was probably one of the longest games any of us had played up until that point.
Was it 3 discs, right?
Well, I mean, not even just the discs. I'm like talking about hours. Like, you can put a lot of hours into a lot of JRPGs. But for the most part, there's really only so far you can go before you're just grinding to grind or whatever. And this game had a lot of content.
Yeah, it did. And that's the reason why it needed to be split into 3 games.
Yes.
So it totally makes sense. Yeah. So let's move into my next pick. Speaking of characters, this is Cid's theme, a very majestic track on XVGM Radio. Welcome back to our Final Fantasy VII extravaganza on XVGM Radio. That was Cid's theme from the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack by Nobuo Uematsu. This was a real gut-wrenching tear-jerker for me. personally. This is a very...
The track?
Yeah, just like... And even the character Sid is a very, like, torn, emotional kind of character who I don't always agree with the way that he treats, like, his research assistant or something that. Yeah. I don't know what it is about this song, but that melody is so sad and yet so hopeful at the same time. It's like this strange pairing. You get these soaring, like almost like vocal melodies that kind of appear, and you'll do it when you listen to the song. You'll hear yourself going like the, you know, we were talking about this during the break. The different melodies that you're hearing with the various different octaves is just so different, and you'll hear a different octave every single time that you listen to it, because there's so much buried deep inside this song. So, but the ones that really stand out for me are those really high melodies. You know, the ones that you could barely hit. The na 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 na. I mean, it's such a, I don't know, like this one gets me, man. Like emotionally, like I've definitely teared up during this song, like listening to it, like driving around or whatever. Like it's hit me before I'll drive and I'll listen to the song and it just hits you in waves and you're just like, oh man, just like, why am I feeling like this? This is just a song, like.
But it's such an epic song. Like,
yeah, for sure.
I called it majestic when we were talking about it. Like, it's epic, it's majestic, it's a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's particularly well written.
Yeah, agreed. Well, before we jump into Sid, Justin, what did you think about it?
Yeah, no, like I was saying before, this is probably my favorite character theme of the game. I mean, most of the character themes are awesome, but yeah, something about Sid's theme, man, it's so good. You pretty much nailed it. The multi-layering of like the melodies, especially, you know, like there are melodies going on that you don't hear on the first time playing the game or hearing the song. And it took me as like a songwriter years of arranging these songs for my band to like even pick up on some of these hidden melodies in Uematsu's music. And I feel like this song, like you said, is like kind of exemplifies that. Like, yeah, you can pick apart all these layers of melody in this song and everyone is just perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
And it all kind of adds up into what I think is the best character theme in the game.
Yeah, no, I think I would agree with that, to be honest. Yeah. So a little bit about Sid. So Sid Highwind is his name. He is a like blondish gray-haired gentleman with, he wears goggles like over his eyes, like on his forehead. And he fights with a spear harpoon type. Like, so Sid is an expert pilot and mechanic who dreams of one day becoming the first man in space. His dream would have been fulfilled, but he aborted a launch in order to save the life of one of his crew. Now he spends his time trying to repair his inoperable rocket in the hopes that Shinra may one day reinstate its space program, giving him another chance at fulfilling his dream. Now, with his lance in hand, Sid is always prepared for battle. His fighting skills are top-notch and come in handy throughout most of the game. His limit breaks are very helpful when fighting the evil hordes that threaten to consume the land. You'll notice that they all cause direct damage rather than affecting status or healing the party. Sid's statistics are pretty average all the way around, which can help or hinder his performance depending on how he is equipped. I can agree with that. I think it depending on what you're putting him with, materia-wise, equipment-wise. It really all depends. Yeah, it's an interesting comparison when you compare like Sid's theme to Tifa's theme, because I know we didn't really talk much about it during the track when we were listening to Tifa's theme, but it's a very soft but sweet track, and that's a perfect description of Tifa. Is like soft but sweet, very girl next door, very like, but very tough and very like hardened. But I don't really get that out of her song. Whereas with Sid's song, when you read that description of him and what he went through to try to live his dream, and he wasn't able to because he chose to save the life of, isn't it his assistant?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, right?
That's the entire cutscene.
Yeah.
She's relating to Cloud and everybody else, why he's so surly, and she blames herself and he blames her, which is an issue that he needs to overcome throughout the course of the game. But there was something wrong with one of the boosters, and she was just in there like right before the launch trying to make sure everything was good.
Yeah.
And then it was getting ready to launch, and he's like, "You need to get out of there.
Right.
If you don't, you're gonna die."
Yeah. So he cancels the launch.
Yeah. And in order to save her, and I mean, it's devastating, and it's very sad. Like, his dreams literally went up in smoke at that point.
Yeah. For sure. So
the best part about his story arc is when you get to do the actual launch again later in the game.
Yeah.
You realize that she was right. There really was something wrong with one of those engines.
Yes.
Yeah. So it made it all worth it.
Yeah. Oh,
and he changes his
story arc.
He changes his behavior towards her as well after that.
Yeah. Totally.
Because he understands. He gets it. He kind of has to forgive himself a little bit for the way that he treated her. And
Sid has like genuine emotional character growth because when you first meet him in Rocket Town, he is very abusive. Like I'm pretty sure he smacks her at one point.
I think so.
He verbally abuses her and everything else.
It's
like,
just not cool.
No, you first meet him and it's like, wow, okay,
I don't like this guy.
my team, and he's not that great.
But by the end of the story arc, you really kind of fall in love with Sid,
and he does his best to make amends. It's
gotta respect them for that. Yeah. And of course, we'll be talking a little bit more about this, but he also creates this thing called the Highwind, which is the ship that you use later, the airship that you get in the game, which speeds up the game tremendously when you're trying to, beat it. So let's talk a little bit about the next track that you picked, Justin.
Yeah.
Going from a very super, ultra serious, ultra emotional song.
Yep.
To what?
To this. So I wanted my last track of this episode to be very silly. I had a lot to choose from. This game soundtrack has a lot of good and silly music, but this one in particular is Fiddle de Chocobo from Final Fantasy VII. All right. Thank you for staying tuned during that. That was my final pick of the night, Fiddle de Chocobo by Nobuo Uematsu. This is, out of all the silly stuff in this game, this is probably my favorite of the silly songs.
Yeah.
It's so lighthearted. It's playful. I mean, this is the song, for those who aren't familiar with it, this plays during the Chocobo races that you can do with the Golden Saucer, where you can go and gamble and stuff. Whether you're watching the race or actually participating in it, this is what you get.
That's it. Yeah. This is definitely what you get. Yeah, for such a serious soundtrack. Mm-hmm. And, we've been talking about this whole time how it's a very emotional, very dark, there's just so many evil sounding songs in there. And then you've got this song. So it really kind of, I'd say like this, and there's another song that's like do-do-do-do-do-do. It's when you're on the beach.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a Costa del Sol.
Costa del Sol, yeah. That's the track. Both of those songs really come to mind when I think of like super happy, fun time songs in Final Fantasy VII. This one, I kind of have a little bit of pseudo hatred for because
did you spend a lot of time breeding and racing chocobos?
Oh my god, yes. And it was just so difficult to try to get that golden chocobo. Yep. But I did it. I got the golden chocobo and got the Knights of the Round materia and the whole 9 yards. I blew through it and got it.
I agree. This one just immediately takes me back to racing the chocobos and breeding them and trying to get the gold chocobo and all that. So yeah, a little bit of trauma when I hear this track.
Yeah. You guys should have covered this song.
No, thank you.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
It's a shame because the song itself is great.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great song. It really is. And it's fun. It's fun and all that. I just, immediately get taken back to racing the chocobos. And I talked about this on another podcast I was on, that I think that, like, the chocobo racing part of Final Fantasy VII is probably the part of the game that, like, has aged the worst.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
And I'm kind of curious to see when they get around to doing that on the remake, whatever part that's going to be on, how they go about it and how they change it and make it a little bit more modernized.
Would you say that that's the thing that you're most looking forward to seeing in remake?
Oh, I never really thought about what I'm looking most forward to. I probably wouldn't say most looking forward to the chocobo races, but
what would you say you're most looking forward to in Final Fantasy VII remake?
I'll have to think about that.
Think about it.
Off
All
the
right.
top of my head, I mean,
let's see if other Justin has anything in mind. What are you thinking?
Having played the demo, because I know you haven't, and
Yes.
not revealing anything spoilery.
Sure.
I enjoyed what they did with the battle system, and I'm really excited to see how they are going to implement. So the demo didn't give us summons. We got to play with magic. We got to play with some other stuff. No summons. Disappointing because the original demo had summons. So what the heck? Squeaks. But I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with the summons in battle. I remember the summons for this game when I first played it were amazing. Like, they're basically little cutscenes.
Yeah.
Considering how the game plays now, I'm assuming that they're not going to do the cutscene thing. If they do, I will find that acceptable, but I don't think I will find that mind-blowing or like, I feel like I will be let down for my excitement, but I will say, like, if it's just like a cutscene type thing, it's acceptable and I'll move on and I'll find something else to be excited about.
I think I've seen gameplay footage of the summons. I've seen one of them.
I think they showed Shiva in...
They showed Shiva, but they also showed the Chocobo army led by the Chocobo with
Fat
the...
Chocobo?
Yeah, no, the Chocobo army that was led by the Mog. I would say I'm most looking forward to seeing the new cutscenes and characters, like, kind of interacting with each other. It was such a really interesting experience in the original, and so to see it come to life in this remade game is going to be really exciting.
Yeah.
If I had to pick a specific section, I don't know. I think the ridiculousness of the fact that they kept the whole cloud cross-dressing and that whole thing, the wall market, like, that was always the part in the game that I would always, like, replay the most, because I would like restart the game. I've restarted the game probably about 10 times, and I've really only played through it like 3 times.
Yeah.
Or 2 times. I can't remember which. But that was always the part that, to me at least, was very memorable. The whole thing with the Honeybee Inn, the hunting down all the clothes and everything, the wrestlers, like all that stuff. Like, it's going to be so interesting to see all that kind of come to life with this very goofy, slapsticky, fun feeling to an otherwise very depressing, kind of stoic kind of experience that you're going to experience. But I honestly do feel like this remake is going to be a lot more happy, I guess you could say. I feel like the original is going to be, when it all boils down to, is the original is going to be a lot more depressing than this remade version. But I don't know. I guess we'll see.
It's possible.
Yeah. Did you come around to thinking of a good one?
Yeah, I guess it makes sense, kind of what you said about just being able to explore more of, you know, the little nuanced sections of Midgar that you didn't really get to explore. Something like the Honeybee Inn, like you were just talking about, it kind of seems like they're even almost doubling down on that and like having more to explore in the Wall Market area now too. So it's like, which kind of gets me excited, because that was a part that I almost thought was, in terms of the scale of the game, it's like, man, they really went all in on this whole Wall Market, Don Corneo, you know, section of the game. And it's like, if they're going to add more to that section, which I thought was already kind of overdone, like what else are they going to like really go into the nitty gritty on? Which I guess if you're going to take that portion of the game and make it into a full game on its own, that's going to be 2 discs apparently.
Oh,
then who knows how big this actual game is going to be. But that's kind of exciting just to see that like that much more of the universe is going to get explored and add more to the lore and the story and whatnot.
For sure.
Yeah.
Let's wrap up this retrospective on this fantastic classic game with my final pick of the episode. This is Highwind Takes to the Skies. Hey, you are back, and I don't know about you, but I feel like I just soared through the skies. That was Highwind Takes to the Skies off of the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack by Nobuo Uematsu. By the way, Nobuo Uematsu, I don't think we need to talk about him. We've talked about him in almost every single episode that we've done in some way, shape, or form.
I feel like we've probably named every game that he's had a hand in at some point. So.
Yeah. So that is the reason why we have not gone over his soundtrack list.
Yeah. Plus, it lets us talk about other stuff more.
Yes, agreed. So, what do you think of this song?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Good ending track.
Yeah,
good
for
final
sure.
pick.
Yeah.
It's much like Sid's theme. It is very soaring. It is very majestic. I feel like you have to sort of do that when you have an airship theme, and that's what this is. The Highwind is. I feel like every Final Fantasy, the airship theme is always just this soaring melody, and it just gives you this feeling of like, yeah, no, this is an airship theme. Like
I'm on an airship.
Yeah.
I'm on an airship. No, I agree. I agree. It is a great note to end on for the most part for the actual Final Fantasy VII tracks. We do have one more track that we're going to go out on the outro, a Night of the Round track. But I don't know. I feel like this is a weird parallel to Sid's theme, because Sid's theme is a lot more emotional, a lot more sad, and this is just such a burst of energy, and it really does make you feel like you could do anything when you're flying around in this airship. It's such a great song to just cruise around to in-game on the world map.
Yeah. I mean, as far as that contrast goes, I mean, think about what we were talking about with Sid's theme and Sid's character.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the Highwind. This is his rocket. This is his ship. This is, this is the culmination of the stuff that he wanted to do. So, of course, we're going to take sort of that Sid-ish theme and make it brighter and sort of remove the melancholy and like put forward that success.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it also kind of brilliantly brings back the main theme of Final Fantasy VII, which we had really only heard for the first time when we leave Midgar.
Yeah.
Haunting almost, but also kind of adventurous, and there's like that ray of hope in that melody, when you first leave Midgar.
Yeah.
And when you hear it again, and when you're in the Highwind, it hits you in a whole different way, and it's, I don't know, it gets you pumped, it gets you like you want to go fly an airship.
Yeah, for sure. So, any last memories of Final Fantasy VII before we dive into our favorites?
Well, for me, it was, this game is what really made me appreciate game music.
Yes.
I had liked video game music prior to Final Fantasy VII. I just didn't really know it. I didn't really know how much I liked game soundtracks and stuff. It took me hearing the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack later, like years later after playing through the game, and hearing those melodies and just getting, instantly transported back to me as a middle schooler, playing the game. And then I would, then check out the other soundtracks of my childhood and be like, oh, wow, the Street Fighter music was awesome too. And, the Mario music is awesome, and the Zelda music's awesome, so I don't know, I guess that's part of why I have this deep fascination with Final Fantasy VII, just because on a personal level, it kind of made me grow as like a musician.
Yeah, that's cool. The Final Fantasy VII soundtrack was the first soundtrack I ever bought twice.
Really?
Accidentally. In old game magazines, they used to have this back catalog thing for import games and stuff and soundtracks. This was back before the internet, pretty much.
Right.
So you had to call a phone number and then tell them what you wanted, and they would take your credit card info and they would send it to you. So I remember really wanting the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack, the 4-disc like monster soundtrack, which I still have my original. I got the international release, but then I accidentally also got the Japanese release. I don't know how I got 2 copies. I think my dad just accidentally ordered 2 copies or something like that. And so I ended up getting the 2 soundtracks. Same soundtracks. Discs themselves were identical, but one had all of the original Yoshitaka Amano art for the character designs, which was really cool. That is a weird memory that I have of Final Fantasy VII.
Final thoughts and maybe more of a final admission. The only thing that I can think of that I have never successfully done in this game, and I think you and I have talked about this before.
Yeah.
The ruby weapon. Only thing I've never beaten, and I
beat Emerald.
Emerald was easy.
Yeah.
I mean, once you realize that the Emerald weapon does things based on what you have or what you do.
Right.
You put 2 pieces of materia on everybody and have their HP at 9999. Then you think you do Ultima, and he'll do the shoulder cannons, which will do 1,111 damage for every materia you have. So it brings everybody down to 7777, and then they just destroy him.
Yeah.
He doesn't get a chance to attack after
Right.
that. So he is an easy boss to cheese, but the ruby weapon, I've read online FAQs, I've read the official guide, I've followed these things to the T.
That's the one who like kills 2 of your characters immediately, right?
Sometimes, depending on what you have,
Yeah.
And just even following these guides, I've never been able to successfully beat him.
Yeah, me neither.
So we'll see what happens.
I forgot how I did it. I beat Ruby Weapon when I played it on the PS3 when they finally put it on the PlayStation Store.
Oh, okay.
I somehow did it. I couldn't tell you how the hell I did it, but I did it.
Replaying the game at this point, I'm not anywhere near there. I'm still on the first disc. We'll see what happens when I get to the end. I have a theory that the version of the game that I had for most of my life, that there was something weird or something wrong about it. Because like I even had friends come over who were like, clearly I'm doing something wrong. Watch me, like tell me what I'm doing wrong.
Right.
And they would watch and they'd go, that's never happened to me before.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's going on here. But
you have a broken version of the game.
Yeah. So, and the version that I have now is the black
The
side
black
version.
one, that's what I have.
So, so we'll see what happens. If I get to the end and suddenly things work, then then I will have justification that it wasn't me, it was the game.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. So favorite picks of the episode. This is the time of the episode where we pick our favorite songs that we've heard from the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack that we picked. So we're going to let the guest from Night of the Round go first. Justin, what is your favorite song that we played?
I gotta go with Highwind Takes to the Skies.
Yes.
It's so impactful when you first hear it in the game, and it's got everything that we talked about. It's got the great main melody because it brings back the main theme motif from earlier in the game. It has all the great counter melodies going on, you know, the layered melodies and stuff, and it's just such a great track.
Very cool.
I'm gonna have to go with Cosmo Canyon. Now, so out of the songs that we played, I am going to go with Underneath the Rotting Pizza.
Okay. With that bass groove, do.
Exactly. What about you?
I'm gonna go Sid's theme. Super emotional track that really gets me almost every time I listen to it.
You surprised me.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna go with Tifa's theme.
No, I'm not that predictable. I love me some Tifa, but so we want to thank Justin from Night of the Round for joining us on this episode. We are going to close out the episode with One Winged Angel. This is their version of the song. But before we do that, Justin, where can we find Night of the Round on the web?
All right, so I mean, we're pretty much on all the social media sites. If you just go to our .com, which is nightoftheround.com, you can kind of get links to everything from there. I think it's got our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Bandcamp,
right.
all that stuff. And then that's about it. Just please follow us on social media. We're relatively active on there. You know, anytime we have show announcements or tours or anything like that, we're always posting about it and hyping it up. So
cool. I was going to say, are you guys playing any shows like in the near future?
We do have some stuff lined up for the summer, assuming that it happens.
Right. With the current climate.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. Kind of unfortunate having an album that we just put out. You know, we'd like to get some shows out there, which, yeah, like I said, we do have some stuff that we can't really announce yet for the summer, but there's definitely some stuff in the works. So follow us on social media to find out what that is when we can talk about it.
And you guys just put out a music video fairly recently for this song as well, this One Wing Angel, right?
Yeah, a day before this is recorded.
Very cool. Yeah.
So
I'm sure we'll post that in either our Facebook or social media or something like that. So stay tuned for that. And again, all the links that we talked about are in the description down below.
So we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon patrons, without whom this show's continued improvement would be impossible. They are Alex Messenger, Scott McElhone, Cam Worma, Chris Hart, Dan Lawton, Chris Murray, Kung Fu Carlito of the Heroes 3 podcast, Jordan and Anson Davis, Chris Myers, Llama Adam, Jeremy Rutz, Peter Panda, Bedroth, Jason Super Jess Doss, Nick Davis, Matthew Hanola, Brad Austin, Mixmaster, and the Autistic Gamer 89. If you would like to become a patron, you can sign up at patreon.com/xvgmradio. There you can see the different tiers as well. Just $1 gets you a thank you and access to our monthly live shows.
You can visit our website, xvgmradio.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and learn more about your hosts, as well as any of our guests or composers that we've had on the show.
If you'd like to reach out to us, you can always email us at xvgmradio@gmail.com.
And if you'd like what you've heard, please consider giving us a rating on iTunes and a review.
You can also join our Facebook group and chat with other VGM lovers at www.facebook.com/groups/xvgmradio, where we talk about everything from current game news to sharing awesome VGM tracks, or just talking about the podcast itself.
And you can find us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle for both of those sites is @XVGMRadio.
If you don't have any other social media or just want to try something unique, check us out on our Discord group chat. Links will be in the show notes.
So, in 2 weeks, Justin, what do we have coming to XVGM Radio?
All right, episode 49 is going to be kind of a blast from the past. We're going to take a look at video games that were made from licensed 80s properties. Movies and properties and things that came out in the 80s that made it to video games.
Yes.
So we're not strictly sticking to video games from the 80s. I'm pretty sure we've got a couple things that came out in the 90s
couple
here.
games, yeah.
But the properties were based out of the 80s.
Yes,
So
yeah.
A lot of good music in those movies and properties, and a lot of good music in those games.
Yeah, for sure. There's a ton of really amazing music in the next episode, so enjoy that in 2 weeks. Enjoy Final Fantasy VII Remake when it comes out in 9 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, boom. So this is Mike.
And Justin.
Signing off for XVGM Radio. from Final Fantasy VII, our game of the day. And the
Rewind. This guy are sick. That like that.
Oh yeah.
You can't drop that one on me like that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's like one of my favorite English like misspellings and
All right, that was Crazy Motorcycle. Not to be confused with Crazy Frog or any of the other crazy stuff. This was actually
Crazy
good.
Frog.
I mean, I wanted to compare something that was actually good to something that's
Right.
actually garbage.
so random.
Sorry.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, before we jump into Sid and his background and everything and his description in the strategy guide, Justin, what did you think about it?
About what?
Not you, Justin. The other Justin.
Oh.
Whoops.